Hey, it's Toussaint Morrison. Thank you so much for tuning into the Social Science Club. It has been daily lately. I love it. Okay, we're going to jump right into it. There was a tweet that was sent out about a few weeks ago, and it said, why are some of the safest neighborhoods the ones with no police? And I thought that was a great point. And that is something that I think we've all noticed and been around and definitely just, it's something that we take for granted. It's like, wow, this neighborhood is very safe and there are hardly any police here. And the immediate answer to that, and again, we'll go from content to context to larger lesson here. And the content of it is saying, you're in a safe neighborhood, you barely see any police. You're in neighborhoods that may not be as safe or maybe under-resourced or maybe on the lower economic scale. And there are police everywhere, everywhere. When I'm in North Minneapolis, which is a predominantly black neighborhood, see police all the time. Police all the time. Now that Uptown has gotten a little more, I wouldn't say there's white flight going on, but there's definitely business flight going on. See a few more police around, but I definitely have seen more police in a lot of black neighborhoods and in a lot of neighborhoods that are on the lower economic scale. Not to say that they're synonymous, but at times we'll find that that is a parallel. And in white neighborhoods, don't see police all the time. Actually, I've seen more recognizable police in affluent white neighborhoods in Minneapolis that are not in uniform. They're actually off duty. I saw the ex-chief of police in a very affluent white neighborhood, and the current interim chief of police in that same white neighborhood, and they were having a conversation at a coffee shop. I've seen the same thing in well-to-do neighborhoods in St. Paul, Attorney General and the chief of St. Paul Police at a coffee shop there. That all being said, so that's the content. The context is, why is that happening? And I think that you might have an answer for it, and I think we all have an idea of what the answer is. And after doing a little bit of research, the main thing that we have to get down to the brass tacks of why are police there in the first place? And the initial response that I would have, or the knee-jerk response I would have is, well, they're there to stop crime or prevent crime from happening or to catch people responsible for crime. Now, we talk about this a lot on this channel about crime. And again, I think that people can come from any side of the aisle, politically, socially, economically, and that's what this channel is for. And I know that some things may come off as indicting. You may see some speeches that have been on this channel that are indicting. And that happens when you're in a place of, an impassioned place and speaking truth to power, especially when there are people's lives being taken by law enforcement for absolutely no reason. And it's 100% preventable. So I think when we look at this idea of crime, we look at it as survivalism. Why is crime occurring? So police not being in neighborhoods that are the safest, and then where are they? They're in neighborhoods that are, quote unquote, not safe. And so we need to look at what is crime anyways, and what are the causes of crime. I call it survivalism. I don't think anybody is born innate saying, yes, I'm going to be Dr. Doom today and just ruin some people's day. I just don't think it works like that. I think we all come from a place that has a sense, a moral compass, and we have inner trauma, childhood trauma, and we have an inner child that we're constantly in dialogue with, or not in dialogue with, and that can affect your life in a certain way as well. And we can get into that another time. But given that we have that trauma and we have that dialogue or non-dialogue with our inner child and who we are, and we're constantly trying to figure out who we are and figure out boundaries of self-worth, validation, love, all these things, compassion, we get stuck in loops sometimes, or we get stuck in places where if we don't have our general necessities, then we will go to extents or exigent circumstances to then get those resources. So if we are in a place that's under-resourced, food, money, shelter, warmth, it's a big thing. Minnesota, it is cold as hell in Minnesota. I mean, it gets really cold. So people are willing to do things to get warmth. And this is part of what I found in researching this and in neighborhoods being under-resourced is many social researchers were of the opinion that crime is heavily influenced by economic factors like employment, education, financial conditions, and the like. It is one of the most common side effects of social exclusion. When we look at crime, the bigger or the deeper stem is economics. We're talking about economics. That's at the root. When people do not have economic resources to support themselves and they've been neglected and taken away from certain neighborhoods, you are then going to get neighborhoods that will seek out economic resources for themselves. And even in not having those economic resources, it can produce a sense of discomfort or social exclusion or social exclusion. So when we talk about there being neighborhoods with pools, booster clubs, after-school activities, fully funded schools, houses, not multifamily houses, but one-family households, which goes into a whole nother. We'll get into multifamily households in another video, I swear. But we look at these neighborhoods, we can see that there is a low rate of crime or survivalism. What are the means or the resources for survival in a neighborhood that already has an abundance of resources? More resources than said neighborhood may need. So when we're looking at that comparatively to another neighborhood that is under-resourced, underfunded, below the poverty line, now we're looking at exigent circumstances. We're looking at discomfort. We're looking at social exclusion. And so one can say that the city has a state-created scenario on both ends. One end where there are no police and it has plenty of resources. We can look at redlining and how these neighborhoods got the way that they did, how they've been legacied into all the money that they have, and segregation as well. Black codes, black people not being allowed to live in certain places, affluent white neighborhoods being extremely ascending economically, I should say, in what's the word from it? Profiting from segregation. And so when you have that, then you're going to create the inverse, which is the other side of town. And I think everybody that's watching this has a other side of town. And that town could be majority people of color. It could be white as well. And that other side of town is policed a lot more heavily than the resourced side of town. And you will find that really in any city in the United States of America. So when we talk about why are these neighborhoods with no police the safest? Well, it throws out the idea that police don't equal safety. Police equal police, really. What equals safety are resources. When people are economically satiated, have a job, have education, have a neighborhood that is financially funded to look out for said neighborhood and fund activities for people left and right, then we're looking at a neighborhood with lower crime, or I should say lower behavior that is in tangent with survivalism. So that being said, when we get to the larger lesson, it was Harry Belafonte that said we should not look at a houseless person and shame them or indict them. We should look at a system that has created houselessness. Now, a lot of people, I understand, will say, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Look at you, you created this situation for yourself. And that comes from a place. However, it is a layered cake when we get into poverty, houselessness, under-resourced neighborhoods, and all the like stratification, and that other side of town being the way it is. And there is a responsibility that is incumbent upon the city to ensure that its citizens don't go without a roof, don't go without food, don't go without an education, and in short, don't go without love and compassion. When we turn away citizens, or when we turn away people and just abandon them completely, we then create a psychological barrier. We create a cycle of trauma amongst ourselves in our own cities. And one thing I'll never forget as we get to, I'm explaining this larger lesson, was a child, and we were in a summer program, and we went out to a houseless shelter. And it's a slightly emotional moment for me to tell the story. And I didn't understand it at the time. And a lot of my friends in the situation did, because some of them had already experienced houselessness. And us being 9, 10, early teens, whatever, the manager of the houseless shelter said, "We're here to serve food and we're here to serve the people. But the biggest thing I want you to do is I want you to talk to them. I want you to actually listen to them. And I want you to sit down and actually have a conversation. Don't just pawn it off as yes, yes, sure, sure, whatever, whatever. Have an engaged, involved conversation with the folks that come in here. Because outside of here, their very existence is dismissed, entirely looked over, looked through. And that stuck with me to this day. It stuck with me a long time. And when we talk about the safest places having no police, on the inverse, we look at the most abandoned places being policed. And it's that sheer abandonment that a city has done, legacy, historically over time, that's incumbent upon us to make our communities better. How can we get involved in places that have been neglected? How can we get involved in the places that our cities will not? How can we get involved in the communities that our city council has turned their back on? That is the big thing that I'm locked into with this channel and the work that I've come upon in the past years, and have been coming upon from my lifetime. I think it's very paramount that we look into the spaces of our communities that have been abandoned, under-resourced, underfunded, and turned away. The first step that I love to do is dive in. What is the history of that neighborhood? Why is Kensington Heights the way that it is? Why is Gary, Indiana the way that it is? What happened in Newark, New Jersey? What happened to the north side of Minneapolis? What happened to Milwaukee? Why is Milwaukee consistently one of the most segregated cities in the country? What is going on in Dallas? There are certain places when I went down there, they were like, don't you ever in your life set foot in that neighborhood. And I want to know why. I want to understand the redlining. I want to understand the politics that's gone into it. I want to understand how Los Angeles, how one of the largest houseless populations became in Los Angeles. Not to point the blame anywhere, but how did that happen? And then jump into, okay, how can we help? How can we support? And with that being said, it answers the question of police show up many times to just police poor people and police people that are in exigent circumstances, suffering from mental crises, and a lot of times being in places where there are a lot of other things that are needed there other than police, and that is resources. And so when we ask the question about policing and safety and crime, the biggest thing I think we're leaving out is resources. And so how can you be of a resource to places that have been under-resourced and bring resources to that place? So think about that. I think that's very important and a daily reminder. And also, if you have resources, to really practice that gratitude of having what you have, and how can you service other people that don't have it. So think about that. I hope that this video was of value to you. If it was, click like. If you want to hear more videos like this, click subscribe. And if you find that somebody can get a benefit from hearing this video, share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate y'all.